Is the Marvels actually that bad? I'm gonna tell you what I thought about the film, its crazy ending scenes, why I was thinking of Ant-Man while watching this, and whether or not you've been lied to. When it comes to this movie, I think it's just a fun time. It's not the most epic MCU movie, and it's not going to be the most memorable Marvel film, but it's also not trying to be. I feel very similar to how I feel about the Ant-Man films, specifically the first two Ant-Man films, not Quantumania, because we don't need to talk about that. But those first two Ant-Man films were never trying to be some of the most epic MCU movies. They were just trying to be these fun little adventures, and that's how I feel about this movie. What's important is this movie knows what it is. Unlike something like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, where the story demands that you take the events of the film seriously, and yet it also undermines all of those tense and serious moments with forced humor, cringy dialogue, goofy characters like MODOK, and so you've got this clashing of tones throughout the film where the movie wants you to take things seriously and feel the threats of Kang, but as an audience member, you can't because it's constantly undermined by these jokes. Now, the Marvels isn't completely immune to this problem. Like, there are some moments in the film where characters are saying things like, the universe is in danger. And as an audience member, you don't really buy into it because the movie's too lighthearted and has too much comedy for you to really feel the threat of the universe being in danger. Now, one of the strengths of the film is undoubtedly Miss Marvel, as well as her entire family. I thought the Miss Marvel TV show was fantastic, and they're able to bring everything that worked about that show and include it in this movie. The character of Kamala is once again so likable, so funny, so relatable, and her entire family kind of being included in this adventure just makes for so many entertaining moments, with some of the best scenes in the movie taking place between Kamala's family and Nick Fury, who, once again, Samuel L. Jackson is fantastic. Now, while the movie is a ton of fun, it's also lacking in terms of any depth that's going to really make it memorable. When it comes to the Carol and Monica relationship in this movie, when they touch on it, it's good, but that's all they do. They just touch on it. We get a couple conversations in here where we start to explore the tension and kind of why these two characters aren't exactly on the best terms, and the movie does try and have some good emotional scenes between the two of them, but once again, with a runtime of only an hour and 45 minutes, and the movie trying to keep things focused on the fun adventure of it all, they're only able to touch on that relationship in a very surface level type of way, and I kind of wish we got to really dive into the dynamic between those two characters a little bit more, because it is one of the more interesting parts of this team up. Now, something that was heavily focused on in the trailers is the characters switching places. And going into this movie, I was a little bit concerned about how that whole thing would play out, but I have to say, I thought it worked out really well. It makes for some of the most fun, creative sequences that you get in the entire movie. The way that they implement the power switching and the confusion that comes along with it, how they're able to choreograph those action sequences, all seem to come together at the same time. Now, there are moments in here where characters seem to be using their powers, but for some reason, they don't switch places, and the movie doesn't actually seem to have a logical explanation for this. It just basically forgets. Now, where this film can suffer is it sometimes feels like it's putting too much of a priority on giving us these fun sequences within the film, where you get these individual scenes that are fun in and of themselves, but the way they play in the overall movie can cause the movie to feel like it's losing momentum. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed some of them. Like, let's just say there's a scene involving cats that I personally thought was hilarious and really worked for me, but other moments, like when they arrive at a planet where people speak in song and you have to be singing the whole time to understand, it's a whole thing. And whether or not that scene worked for you, it can sometimes feel like the movie is getting a little bit carried away with giving us these fun little quirky scenarios, and the overall plot of the movie is just kind of put on pause so that we can laugh at the silly scenario, but the momentum and the actual narrative isn't moving along. Okay, now you've probably heard this 1,000 times when it comes to this movie, but yeah, the villain is not great. First of all, she's not in this movie for very much of it. Like, her screen time in here is pretty limited, and on top of that, even what we do get of this character is very bare bones. They don't really flesh out the character all that much, so you can't really understand her motivations and where she's coming from, and she operates much more as an obstacle for our characters to overcome rather than somebody that you can actually feel for and relate to, and ultimately that results in her being a pretty throwaway villain. Now, the ending of this movie, both the last scene and the mid-credit scene, are both very exciting. And without going into any spoilers here, Both scenes are setting something up for the future, which I think is really exciting as a Marvel fan, because lately a lot of people have been feeling that the connectivity of the MCU, where you're constantly excited about the next project, has been lacking. Specifically with the mid-credit scene, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, is setting something up in a pretty big way for the MCU that will be interesting to see how it connects to one of the MCU films that is coming out very soon. We'll have to wait and see exactly how it's handled, but the theater I was in had a pretty big reaction when that mid-credit scene played. So is the Marvels actually as bad as everyone says it is? Personally, I don't think so. Does that mean it's a great film? Also no. But you guys let me know what you thought of the film down in the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.